We've been closely watching developments overseas and the fallout here at home surrounding one country's debate over legislation that would execute people for being gay. The Anti-Homosexuality Bill of 2009 calls for a sentence of life in prison for being gay, death by hanging for being gay and HIV positive, 3 years in prison for knowing someone is gay and not reporting them to authorities, presumably for prosecution. And that's just some of it. This is actual legislation that Reuters reports is likely to soon become law in the nation of Uganda. But the bill also has many connections to conservative politicians and activists here in the U.S. Today, the largest gay rights group in the state of Iowa, a group called One Iowa, based in Des Moines, issued a petition calling on their own Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley to, quote, publicly denounce the bill and use his influence in Africa to stop the legislation. Why ask Chuck Grassley to get involved with this Ugandan legislative issue? What influence might Chuck Grassley have there? Well, Chuck Grassley is a member of the secretive religious organization known as The Family, famous for operating the C Street House in Washington, D.C. And The Family has been proudly interventionist in Uganda specifically. Over the years, they've been publicly, for them at least, bragging about their influence in that country. The Family reportedly counts among its members in Uganda both the legislator who introduced the Kill the Gays bill and the country's president, Yoweri Museveni. In his book on The Family, journalist Jeff Sharlet describes President Museveni as, quote, the family's key man in Africa. Members of the Family in Washington, including Congressman Joe Pitts and Bart Stupak, were instrumental in steering millions of U.S. dollars destined for fighting AIDS in Uganda into abstinence-only and anti-condom programs. After a lot of success using condom promotion, the American-encouraged change in policy is credited with a reversal in Uganda's once promising progress in the fight against HIV and AIDS. But it's not just American politicians in The Family who are associated with the Kill the Gays bill in Uganda. It's also American religious conservatives more broadly. Just as The Family has been politically influential in Uganda, American religious conservatives have been influential in promoting Ugandan pastors and politicians who are behind this scary bill. Megachurch pastor and author of The Purpose-Driven Life, Rick Warren, for example, proclaimed Uganda to be a purpose-driven nation. He traveled to Uganda to declare himself to be on their side as Ugandan Anglican bishops protested the Church of England for being too pro-gay. And he repeatedly invited a Ugandan minister, who's a key proponent of the Kill the Gays bill, to visit at his California church. In fact, that pro-Kill the Gays bill minister is so close to Warren and his family that Warren's wife publicly called him brother. Rick Warren has since tried to distance himself from the Kill the Gays pastor, but he is pointedly not denouncing the Kill the Gays legislation. The third American connection to the Kill the Gays bill is perhaps the most unsettling. Following the interventionist trail already blazed by these other American conservatives, the spark to the tinder in this already very homophobic country, the spark that appears to have led directly to the Kill the Gays bill, is the American right-wing cause celeb that is the ex-gay movement. Despite being debunked at home by the American Psychological Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the National Association of Social Workers, et cetera, ad nauseum, some American conservatives continue to promote the idea that people can be cured of homosexuality. American ex-gay activists traveled to Uganda in March to lead a conference there about how gay people are only gay because they refuse to be cured. The American Psychological Association just a couple of months ago put out a comprehensive report debunking this industry that claims to be able to change people from gay to straight. And it is an industry. In a moment, we're going to be joined by Richard Cohen, who heads up an organization called the International Healing Foundation, which promotes a wide variety of gay-curing products. For example, according to their brochure, you can attend a tender loving care healing seminar for a cost of only $450 per couple. For another $450, you can enroll in a 3-month teleconference class. Yes, 3 months of phone calls for just $450. For $75, there's his entire 5-CD series on healing your homosexuality. Or you can take home a different 16-disc CD series coming out straight for $49.95, which frankly, just numerically speaking, seems like a better deal. And if you'd like to become a sexual reorientation coach yourself, yes, I said reorientation, the CD series and manual for that is only $349.95. Again, in just a moment, we will talk to the man who is selling all of that. But first, we're joined by Mark Benjamin, national correspondent for Salon.com. In 2005, on assignment for Salon, Mark went undercover, posing as a gay man at one point, to report on the ex-gay industry. Mark, thanks very much for coming on the show. It's good to see you.
Thanks so much for having me, Rachel.
So you wrote this 4-part series about the so-called reparative therapy for Salon. In the second part of the series, you actually pretended to be gay and sought counseling. What sort of therapy or counseling did you get?
Well, this reparative therapy comes in a number of flavors. I attended 2 types of conversion therapy sessions. One was free and was held in the basement of a Christian church where there was a lot of praying, group hugs and prayers, and they essentially cast the devil out of you, and they tell you if you still feel gay, you're just basically not praying hard enough. The other was a sort of more advanced, I guess would be one word, kind of therapy where I went to a licensed counselor's office, sat in a comfortable chair, and met with this counselor. The basic supposition of this conversion therapy was that as a child, it was sort of Freudian in a way. As a child, I apparently hadn't developed close enough or meaningful relationships with other males, and my subconscious later in life turned that into the desire to want to have sex with males. It was also fraught with a lot of bizarre stereotypes. For example, I was told that there was a correlation between poor eye-hand coordination and being gay. So it was a very bizarre session.
Which opens up a whole realm of video game marketing, presumably. In reporting this series, Mark, I know you also talked to a lot of people who had been through this sort of reparative therapy, not in an investigative way, but because they really did want to not be gay anymore. Did you find any evidence, any people that suggested to you that it actually works?
I did not. I found people who claimed that it works, but they were all in the business. In other words, they were selling books. They were doing work like Richard Cohen does, allegedly to show that it works. So I found people that were making money off it, saying that it works. But what I did find was a lot of people who spent a lot of money and many, many years trying to reconcile their Christianity and the fact that they were homosexuals for as long as they could remember. And there's a lot of really, there's a lot of pain out there. I mean, one of the reasons I went undercover in the first place, it's the only time I've ever done it in my career, was because I think there's a death toll here. I mean, I came across people who had attempted suicide and people who I was told who did commit suicide because they tried and tried and tried to not be gay, and they couldn't. And eventually they didn't see any other way out. It's very, very troubling.
Mark, as you mentioned, we're going to be speaking with Richard Cohen in just a moment. He says, and I was looking at some of his most recent literature just today, he says that he has cured thousands of people of being gay. You came across Richard Cohen specifically in your reporting?
I did, and I recall, I believe I asked him, as a matter of fact, I did ask him whether he could produce some of these patients so that I could interview them. I think the other thing to be very careful about is a lot of these conversion mills, or whatever you want to call them, do a very interesting little twist on logic. In other words, the conversion people and the modern field of psychiatry both agree on the definition of homosexuality, which is the desire to have sex with someone of your own sex. However, in their results category, you'll find that a lot of these conversion mills count as success stories people who simply are not having sex with those of the same sex, even though they might want to do so all day long. So there's a little bit of a twist, there's a little bit of a shell game going on there. It'd be interesting to see which Richard claims he's achieved.
I agree. Mark Benjamin, national correspondent for Salon.com. Thanks very much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Rachel.